I am Brad Keelor. She is Victoria Bennett. Coming up next on Director's Cut, find out the most inspirational thing she's ever heard and why she wasn't terrible at that thing. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, except during the summer and 1 week at the holidays, I sit down with a different GI member who has stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, some are inspirational, but they're always fun. All of them, every single week. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this here interview today, head over to geoinstitute.org. Maybe do some reading while you're there. You can scroll a lot because we put too much information on the pages. And you'll learn a whole lot of things about us, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and for some reason people come back every single week and watch this show, so they must, click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Now, our guest, coming to us from snowy, I'm guessing it's snowy. I didn't even ask, where's RPI, Troy? Snowy yes. Troy, New York, where she is a faculty member at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, aka RPI. It is Victoria Bennett. Victoria, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me.
We are going to have a blast this week. We have 10 questions, the same as we do every single episode. 2 of them are the same. We must start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
I think my job most days is to inspire, engage, motivate the next generation of geotechnical engineers. And whenever possible, I steal some of those structural engineering students away from my colleagues down the hall to the wonderful field of geotechnical engineering.
Oh, I like that. And that was very succinct. So, I mean, what age, I guess you said steal. Sometimes they probably come on their own too.
They do. But I don't know. It's been my experience that students come into civil engineering and they think about structures, right? They think, I want to be a structural engineer. I want to do bridges. I want to do buildings. And I always try to tell them, but look at all the interesting stuff you could do if you're a geotechnical engineer and all the problems that we're going to continue to be able to solve even after AI takes over all those structural engineering jobs.
So the kind of the conventional wisdom is that people figure out that they want to do some kind of civil specialty like senior year of undergrad. You've watched this for a long time. When do you think it actually happens? Do you think that's correct, or do you think it's earlier or later?
So I think we do a little bit of a disservice to our students by, and I think it's a product of ABET, and we'll talk about ABET because that's one of my other jobs here. But I think
she's taken a break to do this interview, everybody.
Right. I am otherwise hard at work on my self-study report, but I think, we structure our curricula in a certain way, and in response to ABET, we have to have these kind of 4 areas within civil engineering, right? And so I think most programs have these intro to geotech, intro to structures, intro to transportation, and we do an intro to water resources, but maybe an intro to environmental, and we put that either fall junior year, spring sophomore year, spring second year. And I think students feel like, oh, now I have to decide, right? Because we also ask them to take 2 design electives in a certain area of focus. But I try to tell them in the end, right? You get a civil engineering degree. It doesn't say geotechnical engineering on your degree. And you might find that there's some more interesting problems to solve if you let yourself see all the areas, by not deciding so early in your program.
I really like that. I think we're going to coin a phrase today. It says civil engineering on your degree, but it says geotech
In your heart.
in your heart.
Yes. That's right. What is in your heart? And I think, when you come into school, you come into higher ed at 17, 18, like, yeah, you're finding out what appeals to your heart, and it's going to take some time.
That's perfect. I mean, I feel like we could just wrap it up right now, but we do have 9 more questions, and they're all very good, and the people want to hear these answers. So for posterity, we will continue. We're 208 episodes into this show, and I realized while I was writing these questions, I've never asked anybody about the dentist. Lucky you, Victoria. Afraid or not afraid of dentists and dental visits?
Not afraid. Not afraid. I have to say that my perspective on the dentist has changed now that I have kids and experiencing taking kids to the dentist. And I also see the dentist and the hygienist in a different light when my son, just chomps down on their finger.
Oh, well, yeah.
So I am not afraid, but my 7-year-old is very afraid.
So how do you manage that? Like, and how early do you have to start? I mean, is it like a weeks in advance you start being like, hey, we're going to have to go soon, or do you just drop it on him? Like
that? Yeah, so the former is probably the more gentle parenting way to go, but I have struggled. I have a complex relationship with gentle parenting, and I think that when it came to the dentist, it was just business as usual, and then oh, today's the day, off we go. So,
I'm picking you up early today,
right.
or during the pickup you could do that. I think that'd be very effective. I like that. The third question is always the research question, and after I wrote your questions, I thought I didn't put anything in here about that great GeoPit talk that you gave in Minneapolis in 2020. Well, turns out everything works out on Director's Cut, because that's just the magic of the show, right? And we want to talk about engineering judgment today for your research question, and we start with the GeoPit talk, again from Minneapolis, that I asked you to give on the topic of serious games, and you're going to take us from there to engineering judgment. Let's hear it.
So you felt like I went rogue in Minneapolis, that maybe I didn't answer the question.
No, that's the intent. That's what I want everybody to do.
But I have been working on the GeoExplorer project for a long time, and that was the main topic of the presentation, the GeoPit in 2020. And the GeoExplorer project is a virtual environment in which students can conduct a CPT, so we do cone penetration testing within the GeoExplorer environment, and we now have a levee inspection module within the GeoExplorer environment. And it's been a long time coming, and in 2020 I felt like, oh, it'll be a year, we'll have that module ready, but we now have it ready 5 years later, but we do now have it ready. And I think it gives students an opportunity to do activities, to practice processes that they just really don't have access to in a traditional classroom setting. So you can now take your CPT truck out to a field site, collect the data, see the data, make a decision about when to stop the test, respond to the project manager about your soil type that you found at a certain depth, and what can we proceed with the plan for that particular site. And then for the levee inspection, we're really getting into territory that I just don't think easily fits into a undergraduate program because we don't have that kind of emerging, it's failure mechanisms, levy failure mechanisms. So we don't have that kind of emerging failures in with the same kind of urgency that students feel through this virtual environment. So in that setting where you can fail safely and where you're experiencing an emerging event that requires some kind of decision making and some kind of communication with a project manager and some kind of tie-in to the technical content behind the emerging failure mechanism, I think that is an opportunity for students to practice engineering judgment. And it gives us some content that we haven't yet explored as, I think, geotechnical engineering faculty for giving students feedback on that kind of scenario-based learning. So we've deployed the levy inspection module at Manhattan College and here at RPI, and we're hoping to continue to scale with that, seeking out further NSF funding and continuing to scale that out. So part of the development of the GeoExplorer environment was motivated for us as a research team by this sort of gut feeling that this is a space where students would be able to practice this engineering judgment process. I think you can do it in a traditional classroom too, but what you need is to make it explicit to the students, right? We now have this phrase engineering judgment or use judgment to do things in 2 out of the 7 ABET outcomes, student outcomes. But nobody has really defined engineering judgment. Ralph Peck took a stab at it, right? Another famous RPI graduate took a stab at it and included some, I said, I can't really define it, but I can tell you what are parts of it. So sense of proportionality, selecting and solving the right problem, establishing criteria. Those are things that, he felt that's part of engineering judgment. I can't really define it, but I feel like those are things that we need to have part of it. So we started there, and I worked with 2 fantastic students, Alyssa Rich-Tarek and Ryan Karkin, and we set out to kind of create a framework around engineering judgment. And so Ralph Peck's foundational pieces are there. And, Alan Marr had thoughts about engineering judgment and shared some of that wisdom. But I think what had been missing historically from these conversations about engineering judgment is this global piece to it, right? So there's also the earth and there's also the perspectives of your stakeholders. And I think all of that finds a place in engineering judgment. So we developed a framework and we're still iterating on that as a tool for assessing students' development of engineering judgment. But I think we have to show students what we think is part of it in order for them to develop it and give them opportunities to practice.
Oh, that was really good. And you already got to one of my follow-up questions by going down the whole Ralph Peck road. So that was good. Now, I do have one more, though. I think anybody who's ever written any simulation software, no matter how simple or complicated it is, knows that one of the, to me, it's kind of a lazy piece of feedback, but you're always going to get it, is somebody saying, well, this is nothing like the real thing. You can't. What is your rebuttal? I mean, when you brought up that levy inspection module, that's the first thing I thought of when you said that. Like, how do you respond to somebody who says that to you?
Yeah, so I think we have a team in place. So I'm not designing the software. We have game designers at Northeastern University that are designing the software, and we have partners at Olin College that are helping with answering the research questions around how are students learning in this kind of environment. And then you have to have, if you're going to have any chance of having it be close to the real world, you have to have folks that are in the content area. And so that's the role that I'm playing on this project, is to bring hopefully some reality to the content that goes into this environment. Yeah, it's not going to be exactly the same, but we've used real life videos and images to try to communicate the animation to the developers. And we've spent a long time on it, so we in our geotechnical hearts felt at many stages along the way we weren't replicating reality and we weren't ready to roll it out to students. So we did spend at least 5 years, it's closer to maybe 10 years, in iteration process with the developers to get close to reality. I think the next piece is what we hope to scale even further in this space is not virtual reality, but can we make use of case histories in this kind of simulation-based environment? So can we use what, many groups have put together, these beautiful case histories? Can we use the information? Can we use the real data? And can we deploy it in a setting where students are able to engage with that content? So
the next question is one that I also don't think I've ever asked anybody, and it's kind of ironic that I'm asking it. I don't know. I feel like once you have kids, this is not really a problem you ever have to deal with, but we're going to hit you with this anyway, Victoria. How do you cope with boredom?
You stole the answer right out of my mouth. I am never bored. I was trying to think, like, what does boredom feel like even? Because I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old at the moment. And I have a almost 12-year-old dog who is almost 90 pounds. And a week and a half ago, we adopted a puppy. So I am not bored.
Okay, so we saw my parents go through this 2-dog scenario at one point with the much older dog and the puppy. How's it going?
It's actually going great. You wouldn't have believed it, but it's going great. So the big dog is a hound mix. He's bloodhound and who knows what else. He is on our osteoarthritis injections.
Happens to everybody.
That's right. And I think it's actually doing wonders for him. So I was watching, we've done the injections for 6 months, and I was watching how he is being puppy-like in the backyard on occasion after the injections kick in. And he's almost 12, and I just really was in this place where if we don't get another dog now, then we're not going to get another dog forever, because it's just going to be too hard and sad. And so a friend adopted from a local rescue and sent the link, and this one guy, Miller, caught my heart. And so we brought him in exactly 2 weeks ago today. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a while before you are bored ever again. And I think I'm glad I put that question in there. We're going to talk now about RPI, and we're going to go back to this again in a few minutes here, too. I don't think I realized until I went to your LinkedIn, you got all 3 degrees at RPI, and you have been in their employ since that time. You've literally spent your entire adult life at RPI. What's the biggest advantage of that and the biggest disadvantage?
So I have been really honored to work here with some great folks, and we're going to keep talking about the great folks that I've worked at RPI with, namely Tom Zimmie. And he, I have a funny answer for a question coming up, but he really is why I'm in this job, right? And I'm sitting in his office right now, and I think that I was lucky to spend my whole adult life with someone who inspired me and who believed in me so much and who was really the reason for all things good that have happened to me in my career. And so that's the biggest advantage by far. It comes in the same kind of category with the biggest disadvantage, though, because I was here standing on the shoulders of giants. And within a year, both Tom and Ricardo Dobry retired, and many, many things got left behind in those retirements. And so I became the collector of these materials, just collections of journals and collections of books, textbooks, and I was going to describe myself as a pack rat, but I felt like that was unkind to the rat community. So I was trying to come with a euphemism for being a pack rat, but it's, I am challenged with throwing things away.
I mean, some people just use collector. I think that often is one that gets thrown around. That applies to me as well. So
yes. So I'm a great collector of items, and the items have remained. And so I have these relics that are left in the office. For example, this one that I use also as a bit of inspiration to maybe broaden the
just
broaden the who's included with the soils. So that's one. But also we find gems like this one. So this is
wow.
Yes, and we spend some time with our second year students thinking about the Flint water crisis and how that has really shaped a city, and how it depended on the infrastructure in that city served different people differently in that crisis. And so we're talking about that with our second year students, and I found this book, and I'm like, this is brilliant. And the first sentence in the foreword is a quote from Darcy that says, "A city that cares for the interests of the poor class should not limit their water, just as daytime and light are not limited. Thus, Henry Darcy expressed the value of, and indeed the right to, clean water for the public." I mean,
wow.
It's timeless. So that's the disadvantage, is that I'm going to be sorting out piles and piles and piles and piles of books and files for the rest of my life.
That's a happy way to live as far as I'm concerned. And we're going to go right into the next question, because I know it's going to involve RPI also. So this is pretty seamless as far as I'm concerned. The second question we ask everybody when they come on the show is, how did you first get involved with ASCE and GI?
Yeah, so Tom Zimmie was great. I mean, we were talking about TRB earlier, and he was a big TRB attendee, and we first started traveling to conferences together there, and then we would go to of course, he was going to every annual geo-congress, and he would say to me, all the action happens at the committee meetings, go to the committee meetings. So I was going to the Earth Retaining Structures Committee meeting way back. And at the time when I was doing my PhD, we were working on field instrumentation. So this field shape acceleration array that is now manufactured by Measurand in Canada. And we were implementing the sensor into the retaining wall in San Diego, and so I'm going to go check out what the Earth Retaining Structures Committee is all about. And that's like early memories is being, you feel like I was a kid, right? I was just a kid, and I'm walking into this room with these giants in the field. But it was really cool. I mean, it was so welcoming, and I remember I started talking about what I do. Oh, can you share more? And now all of a sudden I'm connecting my computer and giving a presentation informally that I wasn't even scheduled to do. So that I'm really grateful for those early opportunities, and to know that piece of advice, which I guess I would give to folks attending conferences, in your early days, is go to the committee meetings. It's really where the action happens.
Well, but I gotta say, I mean, we're putting the final touches on geotechnical frontiers here. There's some pretty good stuff that happens outside the committee meetings too.
No, of course there is. Of course there is, but everybody knows that stuff, right? I mean, I think
good.
that
Nice save.
I think that for the
I like
especially for students, right? I mean, I think you would see the headline stuff, and I'm not saying don't go to that, but also check out this stuff that is maybe buried in the agenda.
We're going to get back to Tom in just a minute here. First, we have to talk about the capital region, which you find yourself in, the capital region of New York. For those who don't know, and I'm going to guess it's a lot of people, the capital of New York is Albany, not New York City. What is your best estimate, Victoria, for the percentage of Americans who know the actual capital of New York?
So I refrained from Googling this, and I'm gonna say optimistically 50% of Americans know the capital of New York is Albany.
Do you correct people when they say it to you? I mean, you've spent your entire life in the state, correct?
Yeah. So people, there's also this local debate around, or a New York State debate around, what is upstate, what is considered upstate New York, right? So I consider myself to be an upstate New Yorker, but I'm 3 hours away from New York City. So there are people in Poughkeepsie that consider themselves upstate New Yorkers, so that's also a debate. But yeah, I do correct people, and you correctly pronounced it as Albany.
What's the alternative?
Albany. Albany.
I've never heard that. I guess I would hear it a lot less than you, though, as someone who lives there. And then so there are 3 cities in the capital region, correct? Troy, where RPI is, and then Albany, and the third is
Schenectady.
There you go. That's wonderful. I like that.
And you didn't have to check, and I'm glad that you were correct in recognizing that RPI is in Troy, New York, and we are different than the institution that is in Rochester, though it does have a similar sounding acronym. We sometimes get confused with RIT, but we are RPI.
Well, I mean, huge hockey fan. There's no way that I was going to make that mistake, right? I believe right around the time I got interested, RPI won a national championship. I think it was 1990. And so it's forever seared in my brain. And RIT, they don't even have a national title. So we're gonna get back to Tom Zimmie now. And this is the 3rd episode in 4 weeks that we've talked about Tom Zimmie, and he's everywhere all the time. And it's kind of coincidental, actually. But I knew when I was going to have you on that we had to get a great Tom Zimmie story. And so, I mean, I don't know whether to ask for your favorite or an all-time classic or what. I just told you to be ready with some stories. And so that's all I'm going to lead in with, and you're going to make it magic.
Well, there are so many stories. Like I say, I'm just so fortunate to have spent, and I don't know if you know, but we named our ASCE student chapter in Tom Zimmie. Yeah. So that was a really nice event that we had almost 2.5 years ago, and I was so fortunate to be able to say all the things, right, to this person that I just loved so much. And he had a very different teaching style than I do, and it was much more informal. And he would come and he'd bring the textbook, but he just told stories, right? And that was the gold of his teaching style. That's what made my heart say, my degree says civil engineering, but my heart says geotechnical engineering, because I just saw all of the things that you can do as a geotechnical engineer, right? And the answer is always different. You have to run the test. That's what I tell my students. You have to run the test every time, because you don't know, right? You got to find out about the soils. So I I don't teach in the same style as Tom because I don't have the stories. And even though I tried to write them down in my textbook has these like tiny little summaries of these stories. Or sometimes it was just a quote like, so-and-so brought their grad student out into the field and then they were running for their lives because this thing. And so like I have this quote about then they were running for their lives. And so yeah, I couldn't come up with one story. I think that I just was really lucky to have been here at the right time. And what I remember is sitting in my, we live in this world where we can do this all the time and talk to people, and it's so usual to have this kind of conversation. But when my second year of college was 2002, right? And we had one desktop computer in my family home, and it was, I don't know, like the summer in between. We might have even still had AOL discs at that time. I don't know, but right, we lived in the country and we had the one desktop computer. And I remember sitting at the desktop computer at home, maybe on a break, a summer break or a winter break, I don't remember, but I got an email from Tom that said, looking through your record, and you have all these extra credits, but you haven't taken capstone, so you can't graduate early. And are you thinking about grad school? And it's like, he wasn't my advisor. He wasn't the department chair at that time. He was just looking out for students. And that's what he always did. And it was that email, right, that set the trajectory for, oh, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about grad school. Yeah, I guess I'd like to do that. And then so I'll stay for a master's. So then I'll stay for a PhD, and I never left.
But I do want to ask, to take you back to your first year of teaching, and what kind of difference did it make? I mean, you were there with Tom, you were there with Ricardo, like you knew them at this point because you'd been there for years. Like, how big of an impact did that make on you? That the first year of teaching's tough. How much easier was it, I guess, because the two of them were there?
Yeah, well, the truth is, right, and I know that other students of Tom will recognize this, that if I were to say, could I use your notes, right? Could I use your notes for teaching Intro to Geo? Nope. There's no notes, right? There was the textbook. He brought the textbook and he would go and he would talk about the textbook.
And the two hemispheres of the brain, right?
Yeah. So it was all there, and it was never on a thing that he could hand to somebody else. Even though I have the textbooks with his writing in it, right? So I think it definitely made it easier to have been a TA for him, right? And I'm studying how he structures things and how the assignments go out. But it was more, I knew that I couldn't do it his way. I had to do it my way, which in my heart said, I need to put some structure around this. I need to scaffold this learning for the students. And also, I need to find a way for them to see how much I love it in the same way that I saw how much Tom loved it. So that was really the part that came into my first year of teaching.
Oh, that's good. So I really am happy we got Tom 3 out of 4 weeks again. That is fantastic. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the memories. And for all the viewers, stick around at the end for maybe a little bonus Tom Zimmie content, a little field trip. You'll enjoy it. The question that we teased at the beginning, usually we don't put it this late in the interview, but today's a special treat. This one's pretty darn good. Victoria, what is the most inspirational thing someone has ever said to you?
This person that said this to me, and I'll give the context in a moment, said, straight-faced, completely deadpanned, you're not terrible at this. And I found that to be quite inspirational. So I used to be a ski racer. In high school, I was a downhill ski racer, and we would go to do these camps where we would come and work with coaches that weren't our own coach. So my coach at my home mountain, West Mountain, it was my dad. And, you know, how you are when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily believe your parents, you don't listen to your parents all the time, you might defy your parents. So we had a great coach skier relationship, but it was because it was someone that I didn't know, and because it was someone who had been to the Olympics, saying to me, "You're not terrible at this," when he saw me work on this this particular skill, which was super giant slalom, a super giant slalom training camp. And you know, we were joking that it's meant to be a funny response to what is the most inspirational thing someone has ever said to me. But I think there is something to it in terms of you don't get too big for yourself, right? So that stayed with me for 25 years. So it was somewhat inspirational.
I think too, in those moments, you know, I had a dad who coached too. And I think it probably annoyed him when I would go to baseball camp and I would come back at the end of the day and I would say, you know, we worked on, you know, whatever, fly balls today. And, you know, the coach told me that if I'm going back towards the wall to turn to this side, and that would make it easier to catch the ball, you know, something like that. And of course, my dad's response would be, "We did that in practice like 3 weeks ago." And it's hard being a parent coach, I think.
It is.
So sorry, Victoria's dad. What will definitely happen? Now, remember, you got between 20 and 25 years here. What will definitely happen in civil and geotechnical engineering before you retire?
So I think that before I retire, we will see the impact of AI in civil engineering as a field broadly. And I think that the impact that these kinds of AI, generative AI technologies have on our field as a broad field of civil engineers will be different for different subspecialties. So before I retire, I think we will see some things, beam and column layouts, maybe being taken by outsourced AI technologies, but I think that we will still see geotechnical engineers as a needed commodity within the field of civil engineering because we have these complex problems to solve. So how much,
I mean, you're around people 18 to 22. I guess more accurately 18 to 25 probably, but like all day long, every day. I mean, this might skew your opinion of this a little bit because it's maybe a little more in your face than it would be otherwise. But what do you see as the concerns around AI of that group that's coming up right now? I mean, even if they're minimal, even if you've got somebody who's like full speed ahead, what's in the back of their heads about why this might not be a positive thing right now? We'll do that. We'll cover that side first.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry, I'm gonna change my
That's
answer
okay.
a little bit to your question.
What the show's all about.
But I think that it's scarier to me that they aren't questioning it more.
Yeah.
Is the real thing. So I think you know, there's a whole generative AI in higher ed conversation that could take us another lifetime to answer, and it probably will. But you know, then there's also we've used software for a long time, right? But I think we always should keep in mind that we're only as good as our constitutive model. We're only as good as the parameters, the values for the parameters that we're inputting, right? And it's the same kind of thing for AI, in my opinion. I think you have to still layer some judgment on top of it, right? And that's why I'm really gonna hook back into the engineering judgment piece, that we can we can get knowledge maybe from AI or generative AI tools. We can use that technology, but we still, especially in geotechnical engineering problems, have to apply some judgment. And that's, at least I hope within my lifetime, still going to require a human being.
Oh, I like that. And of course, we will put the link to Ralph Peck's engineering judgment videos in the show notes below where you're watching this, so you can check that out for yourself if you haven't seen it. It's fantastic. I think it was done in about 1990. It's well worth your time. So Victoria, thank you for doing this. We made it through, as we usually do on Director's Cut, a whole bunch of topics today, and that's how the show goes. For the viewers, if you liked what you saw, and you probably did because you're here at the end, click like, subscribe, get notifications, and we will, of course, let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel, which is pretty frequently. So keep on checking back. I hope this was fun. I hope you got to share everything you wanted to share today.
I think so. I'm really glad. Thanks for having me.
So we will see everybody next week with a brand new Director's Cut. It's our last one before we go on site to Louisville and Geotechnical Frontiers 2025. You'll want to be around for that, and we hope to see all of you in Louisville in just a couple of weeks. But again, for now, we will see you next week with a brand new episode of Director's Cut.
Yeah. Okay. So my Monstera in full glory.
Wow.
There. Are we going into the jungle here?
It kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
This is intense.
Yes. And then you were gonna. So I'm gonna answer the question. What's a disadvantage of staying at RPI for your whole adult life? And
I'm guessing we're looking at it.
We're getting into it. Yes. So every book in that bookshelf came from Tom Zimmie, and this office was completely cleared out. It was completely cleared out. Everything, because this was his office, and everything went out, and now I don't know, maybe a third of it has come back in. So this isn't even the tip of the iceberg.
That is awesome.
In terms of stuff. So let me see what I can do for stretching you. Hang on. Okay, I think I'm back. You hear me?
You are back.
Okay, and now I'm mobile.
Wow. This is the first time we've ever done this during an episode of Director's Cut. Oh, wow.
Do you see it?
I do. That is amazing. I love that one right at the center. I think we're losing connectivity.
It's hard to know which way to angle. There we go.
That's pretty good. Oh, that is spectacular.
So this one is wait a minute. It's hard to do. It's hard to watch.
Yeah, because everything's backwards.
Yeah. Do you see 20-year ago me in that picture?
Very nice. Oh, that is super cool.